Well, good evening, everyone. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Robert McCormick, and I'm just going to give you a wee short word of testimony about how I came to faith. I am the oldest of 4 children and had the privilege of growing up in a Christian home where, from a very early age, I was sent to church, Sunday school, and to the Good News Club in Fintona, ran by the CEF. We also as a family went along to Blacksession Mission Hall on a Sunday night, and it was here that I was saved through the preaching of Mr. Alec Russell at the harvest service in the first Monday night in November 1980. At that point, I then started to attend the Faith Mission prayer meeting on a Wednesday night, where an elderly gentleman, Christian man who had been walking with God for a long, long time, took me kind of under his wing and just taught me so much in how I should do things, how I should approach people, how I should speak to them, and most importantly, how I should share my faith. So as life moved on, that was, as I say, I was saved in 1980. I then started working for Ulsterbus in 1990, and this gave me a great opportunity to share my faith with several people, both work colleagues and obviously the passengers that I met on a daily basis. Then in 1995, I got married, and the 3 children came along in 96, 97, and 2001. And at this stage of my life, I was teaching Sunday school and was involved in youth work in my previous church. And life really was good. Teaching the young people, just sharing my faith with them, and God just opened so many doors. And at that period too, in 2011, I had the opportunity to go on a mission outreach team to Kenya, which was a life-changing experience, just seeing people from a completely different culture and how they loved and worshipped the same God as I did, but in a very, very different way. And life really was so good. And suppose I really was on top of the mountain and everything was going along fine. But things changed in February 2020 when my wife of nearly 25 years walked out and left. And suddenly I found myself in the valley. I suppose had a choice. Do I turn to God or do I turn away from God? But it was really only one choice that I had, and that was to turn to God. And just how in my hour of despair, how you just feel God's presence and how He draws alongside you, lifts you up, and just encourages you. But shortly, I suppose maybe about a month, 3 weeks a month after Nicola left, I hadn't been sleeping great, but I did feel God's presence with me. But one particular night, I just felt completely overwhelmed. I cried out to God and just said, look, God, you need, because on that particular night, I was having thoughts that more or less taking the law into my own hands, which I knew was not the right thing to do. But I cried out to God and I asked Him just to give me a promise, to give me a verse, something that just would encourage me to keep me going. And I can remember it so clearly at the very next morning at 18 minutes past 6, God gave me a voice gave me a verse. It was Proverbs 3:33, and it says in it that God will bless, or He will destroy the house of the wicked, but He will bless the home of the righteous or the upright. And the peace that came along with that verse, it just made me realize that no matter how deep I felt, how deep I felt it was in despair, God was still with me. And if there's somebody listening here tonight, and maybe you're in the same situation or a completely different situation, but God can meet you at your hour or in your point of need. It doesn't matter what that situation is, God is with you. And all you have to do is just turn to Him and cry out to Him. As things moved on, God gave me several opportunities to share my faith through the breakup of my marriage. I got speaking to people who, if I had ever mentioned God to them before, would have ran a mile, but now they sat and listened to me. And the one thing that it has taught me, that we serve a God that never wastes an opportunity, and He can use those situations which seem hopeless, and He can turn them around for good. And it amazed me how many times I got speaking to people about what had happened, and several people had said to me, well, how did you cope? And that gave me the perfect opportunity just to tell them how I turned all over to God, handed all over to Him, and just left it with Him. And just in closing, just a wee verse from Romans 5, verse 1. It says, therefore, since we have been made right in God's sight by faith, we have peace with God because of what Jesus Christ has done for us. And that, it's nothing that we can do on our own, because Jesus has already paid the price. But we have to accept Him as our own and personal Saviour. That's our side of the bargain. And that peace that comes along with that, it's just mind-blowing, because when you are on top of the mountain and everything's going great, sometimes we maybe think we don't need God. But when we do hit those valley experiences and we find that we have nowhere else to turn, only to God, it's the peace that comes along when we can just cry out and just realize that God is with us no matter where we are. So if you're here tonight and it doesn't matter what situation you find yourself in, I would just say to you, turn to God and just accept Him as your own and personal Saviour, because none of us know, we're not promised tomorrow, and none of us know what lies ahead. And I personally don't know what lies ahead or what my future holds, but I do know who holds my future. Thank you.